Hi, welcome to week one. I'm excited to be with you on this journey. I have all my notes here so I don't forget to tell you anything. And I wanted to start off by saying, don't feel the need to absorb all of the information in this video all at one time. It's a lot. Feel free to pause it, to go back and reference it over and over again as many times as you need to zoom in on certain sections when you need a reminder. What you'll probably want to do is watch the mindset video and the instructional video once through the weekends prior to the beginning of the week. Get an overview of what's to come, be able to talk to your child about what you'll be doing and get them excited about it, see what the materials list is for the week, and then you can always go back later and go into certain sections of the video to get yourself a reminder to make notes as you need to. So being week one, this instructional video will be probably a little bit longer than the rest because there's a lot of information to give you. And I'm just going to start by going over the overall layout of the lessons for the week. So we have these 6 different subjects or instructional areas that you'll be covering objectives in. We have the 3 more academic areas of language, literacy, and math. And then we have the other areas, fine motor skills, general cognitive thinking ability, and we also have social and emotional learning. So every week you'll have objectives in all 6 of those areas. Now first, you don't have to cover every single objective every day. This curriculum is designed to be flexible. So we offer you a wide range of activities that you can pick and choose what you have time for that particular day, what works in your schedule, just simply what activities your child is enjoying, and offer you different ways to cover these objectives by mixing and matching different activities. So there's definitely no need to hit every single one every day. 2 of these different subject areas, the language objectives and the cognitive objectives, we cover slightly differently than we do the other areas. And the reason for this is that those 2 subjects don't necessarily lend themselves to specific sit-down activities for very small children. The language objectives and the cognitive objectives are better covered through a lot of parent modeling and just through looking for opportunities in your everyday life to notice these moments where your child is already doing these things and capitalize on them, games that you're maybe already playing where you can incorporate these things, and just a much more natural integration of these objectives. And so the way that we cover these is by me talking to you about them more in depth during the instructional video and giving you activity ideas that you can use not only throughout the week to come, but throughout the rest of your time doing this course with your child to look for those opportunities to work in these objectives. These language objectives and cognitive objectives are not like, for instance, learning a letter sound, where your child maybe masters that and then you move on to something else. These are ones that you're going to want to continue to practice, and they're ones that take a longer period of time to really, for your child to really absorb and master. And so that's why we don't offer you one and done activities for these objectives. We offer you a lot of ways that you can model these activities for your child. So in the instructional videos at the beginning of the week, you'll see much more of a focus on me talking to you about the language objectives and the cognitive objectives, and then a brief overview of the objectives that you'll be doing actual activities on in the other subject areas. So then for Monday through Thursday, once you get into your week, you will have those activities for each of those subject areas to choose from. And as I said before, you can mix and match them depending on your day, depending on what you have time for, depending on what your child is enjoying doing, to cover those different subject areas from Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, we offer you a little bit of a break from this normal routine to do a larger, more comprehensive project that is designed to be fun, designed to be an opportunity for a lot of interaction with your child, and also designed to integrate and cover a wide variety of objectives in different learning areas all at the same time in this cumulative project for the week on Friday. So now let's get into some of the specific objectives for week 1. And I'll start with our language objective. You'll notice too that a lot of times the language objective and the cognitive objective sort of relate to each other. And that's very much the case in week 1. So for the language objective, your focus is that your child is comfortable answering why questions. You ask your child a why question, and they are able to confidently give a thoughtful answer to that. Some children really hesitate with this. And the reason for that can often be that why questions feel risky. What if they don't give the correct answer? A lot of times this is sort of ingrained in them by grown-ups using why questions kind of as a quiz. And if a child doesn't know the answer, it's like the proverbial blank page for artists or writers, where it can cause that block of like, oh, I don't know what to say, and what if I get the answer wrong? So there are some strategies that you can use and some activity ideas to help just get your child comfortable answering why questions. And one of them is, as far as the strategy goes, is to ask them open-ended questions. You're looking for their thoughts and their opinions. You're looking to get those wheels turning in their head. And so you're going to ask them why questions that there isn't a black and white, right or wrong answer to. You're asking them for their opinion. So that's a fantastic way to get them comfortable with those types of questions. The other strategy to use, and I absolutely love this one, is to never ask a young child a question. This goes more for when you're asking a specific factual question that maybe there is a correct answer to, is to never ask a young question, a child that you don't know they know the answer to. Whether you're asking them what the name of a particular animal is or what sound does that animal make, but you're going to not use why questions as a quiz to see what the child knows or doesn't know, but instead you're going to use the why question as a confidence booster by asking them, giving them the opportunity to display their knowledge by asking them why questions that you know they do know the answer to, and then celebrating that with them. And that will build their confidence in answering those questions as well. They don't need to be quizzed at this age. Save that for later. At this point, use those why questions as a confidence booster for their language skills, and to really let them feel comfortable unlocking their language skills and letting those wheels turn, not just with their thoughts, but then letting that come out of their mouth and give you a great answer to a question in their own words. Make them feel comfortable with that. So some activity ideas to actually incorporate these into your life are, when you watch an episode of your child's favorite show, you can discuss all the whys of the storyline. Why do you think that character reacted like that? Why do you think this particular event happened? And those are kind of opinion-based questions. It lets your child really think critically and deeply about what's happening in the show and think about cause and effect, and you can engage them on their favorite characters and their favorite TV shows. Like, who doesn't love to talk about that? You can give your child a choice of activities. Do you want to ride your bike, or do you want to go to the park? Do you want this for lunch or this? Do you want to wear this shirt or this shirt? And then follow that up with, well, why did you choose that one? And that's another great way of just getting them thinking about their own decisions, their own value judgments. Even little children can do that. Well, I chose this one because it has a dinosaur and I really love dinosaurs. I want to go to the park today because I really feel like swinging. And that's another fantastic way to get your child involved in just used to talking about the things that are already going on in their minds and answering those why questions. You can discuss with them the whys behind household rules. This falls into the category of not asking them questions that they don't know the answer to, but it is a great way to elicit a response that shows a little bit of forethought and knowledge that's deeper than just the surface of asking them, why is it that only grown-ups are allowed to use the stove? Things like that. You could, another great fun one is to imagine a fun hypothetical situation. What kind of superpower would you have? Or which superhero would you be if you could be any of them? What kind of animal would you be? if you could be any animal, and then asking them why about that. Again, it gets them thinking critically, and then it gets them in the habit of being able to put those thoughts into words. This is also a fantastic time to model complete sentences to your child. So this is an entirely different language objective, but I just want to mention it here briefly because it's such a fantastic opportunity to do it. Usually in conversation, when we answer why questions, we usually do it in incomplete sentences. That's just the convention of our speech. Why did he go to the store? To get milk. Well, to get milk is an incomplete sentence, and that's just how we typically answer why questions, all of us in everyday conversation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you do very much want to get your child in the habit. Children pick up grammar so much through hearing it. And one fantastic way to get your child used to hearing the difference between a complete sentence and an incomplete sentence, and this is, you can teach them this long before they will get into the nuts and bolts of what nouns and verbs are and things like that, is by modeling for them how to answer a why question in a complete sentence. So for instance, when you're doing this, why did he go to the store? Instead of saying to get milk, you say he went to the store to get milk. So by you answering these questions in complete sentences, or by gently, not correcting your child, but gently rephrasing their answers into complete sentences, it's really going to help them. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but by doing that, by starting at this very young age where they're just absorbing the sort of unspoken rules of language, and continuing that, by the time they are in second grade, third grade, where they are starting to learn, what's a noun, what's a verb, what makes a complete sentence, they'll already be used to hearing that. And it goes a long way to building that skill. So I thought I'd mention it here because why questions are a fantastic way to incorporate that as well. Transitioning to talk about the cognitive objective for this week, which again goes hand in hand with it. It's asks why questions. Now, a lot of preschool age children, they don't need any help with this at all. They're notorious for asking a million why questions. But there are other children who really don't seem to do that very much. And both of those are perfectly natural, but there are ways that you can encourage it and encourage, an inquisitive nature. And so I wanted to share with you a couple activity ideas that will help with that. And they not only help your child to ask the why questions verbally, but they help them to have an inquisitive nature in general and to want to investigate things further, which will go a long way in their learning career. So when your child, one of the ways to do this is that when your child does ask a why question, the world sort of needs to stop at that moment. Whatever you're doing, put it down, stop for a minute, and take the time to acknowledge that that question is important and worthy of having an answer to. So make a point to answer their question knowledgeably and as immediately as you can. They're asking, why is the sky blue? Or what do lizards eat? If you don't know the answer, thank goodness with technology these days, it's so much easier. You're not going to the library or breaking out a giant encyclopedia. You can usually just go to your phone and really quickly look up an answer for them. And it's best to do that as quickly as possible when they ask the question. So say, oh, that's a really great question. I would be interested to know that too. Let's find out, assuming that you don't already know the answer to their question. The other thing that models for them is that you don't have all the answers either, and that this is worth investigating. We should go and look this up and learn something new together. It's a fantastic tool to encourage further learning, further questions in your child. It also goes hand in hand with the other activity idea for this objective, which is for you to model an inquisitive mindset yourself. So you want to sort of out loud ponder and ask questions, in front of or to your child and say, I wonder why, such and such. I think I'm going to look this up. Do you want to look it up with me? Show them that you're curious about the world too. Show them that you don't have all the answers to everything, but there's things that you would like to know, and that there's ways where we can go and find out what the answer is. Show them that that's a worthy thing to do. And it will encourage them to think about things more deeply and to ask those questions themselves. So that's the language and cognitive objectives for week 1. As you can see, these aren't one and done type of things. These are things that you'll want to continue to incorporate even after week 1 is over. But this is the place to start that. And now let's go into some of the objectives for subject areas where you can cover them in a little bit more structured activities. And we're going to start with literacy. The literacy objectives for week 1, we're going to start at the very beginning of the alphabet with letter A, and we're going to work on identifying the upper and lowercase letter A, including not just a handwritten lowercase a, but also the one that your child will see in print most of the time, which has the little extra curved line on the top. Which reminds me, I should go back and mention, when you're working on letters throughout your child's entire preschool career here, a lot of times you'll see on different alphabet products for children, there's a huge focus on the capital letter. You'll see like table mats or other toys, books, where there's much more of a focus on the capital letter than the lowercase. But that's not how print works in real life. In real life, when we're reading a page, almost all of the letters are lowercase. So you want to have much more emphasis on your child recognizing and being comfortable with the lowercase letters than the capital ones, simply because they will see that so much more. So we'll start with letter A, identifying the upper and both lowercase versions of that. And we'll also start with telling the short sound of A. So vowels in particular have multiple sounds. Some of the consonants do as well. For each letter, in this age group, we're only going to be learning a single sound. So for the consonants, it's pretty easy. Their main sound that the consonant makes, will be focused on that. And for the vowels, we'll be focused on the short sound of the vowel. So for A, that's going to be a, like apple. And you want to look for examples where you hear that short sound of A. A lot of example words that you'll see on, again, flashcards, worksheets, they don't always include examples where A is just making the short sound. So when you encounter one of those examples, and if your child points out a word with an A, but in that word the A is making a different sound, perhaps it's a long sound where it says its name, like A in face, you can acknowledge that and say, yes, A is a vowel, and vowels make lots of different sounds. We're learning the short sound of A, and then you reiterate the example. The short sound of A is a, like apple, reinforcing that short sound that they're learning, while still acknowledging that, yes, you will see words where A makes different sounds. And in some words where the vowels don't make any sounds at all. So you can acknowledge if your child is pointing out an example to you, you want to try to stick with examples that are appropriate to the sound that we're learning, and not point out other examples at this point. It gets a little overwhelming and confusing. But if your child points out an example, you can acknowledge that that's an exception, or it's different from what we're learning right now, and then just reiterate the examples that illustrate the short sound of the vowel that you're learning right now. That brings me to one very specific point that I wanted to make, is that a lot of times, even if you look up words with the short sound of A, they will use words that include the AN or the AM combination, like can, ran, pan. Anytime A comes before an N or an M, that's not a really good example of the short sound of A. It actually doesn't make the A sound in those words. I have no idea why it is so frequently included on the short sound of A word lists, but it doesn't actually make the short sound. It makes far more of a short E sound with those words. So I just wanted to point out to you, those are poor examples. I would steer away from them if possible, because as you sound out the word with your child, it doesn't actually make the A sound. So we will be giving you lots of good examples. You'll have our flashcards with some appropriate examples where A is actually making its short sound. The other literacy objective for this week is knowing the text is meaningful and can be read. So your child may already be familiar with this concept just from you reading signs, reading books, reading recipes, but the way to accomplish this is by frequently reading to your child and reading to them repetitively. They probably have a favorite story that you've read to them over and over and over again. Some children by this age even know books by heart just from having heard them so many times. The purpose of this is for them to understand that a word means something and that it means that same word means the same thing every single time it's read. So in other words, that a page of text in their book that is maybe there's a picture in their book of a farm, and the words that go with it are going to say the exact same thing every time that book is read. It's not just sort of you looking at the picture of the farm and making up something about it. It's those specific words say specific things, that the print carries meaning and that meaning doesn't change unless the print changes. Moving on to math. So the foundations of math, counting, number recognition, are critical to higher math skills. Many math programs for young kids go on to adding and subtracting and higher level operations long before they've established a really firm foundation in counting and number recognition. So we have a lot of focus in this course on those foundational skills, and the first few weeks give lots of practice in counting and number recognition. The objectives for week 1 are counting objects up to 20. So you'll want to do this many times with many different types of objects, and I'll explain to you in a minute why counting many different types of things is important. If your child is already really comfortable with this or grasps it really quickly, feel free to count higher. You don't need to bore them if they've already mastered counting up to 20. You do want to make sure that you give special focus to the teens, make sure that they're really comfortable with the teens, because those are tricky for some kids. They're just a little bit harder to say. Some children kind of mix up the order of the numbers in the teens, and so you want to give special emphasis to that to make sure that they have really mastered, 13, 14, 15, 16, up through the teens, because that can be a little bit of a tricky area. We give you multiple weeks to work on this objective. And as I said, the way you can switch it up and keep them from being bored with it is to count many different types of objects in many different contexts and scenarios. And if need be, again, count higher than 20, and that's fine as well. We also work on, the other objective is identifying written numbers up to 10. So by written, I don't mean the word, like not 2 as in TWO, but the numeral 2. So we work on recognizing that, that the number corresponds to a particular number of things. And this leads into the third objective for math for this week, which is understands one-to-one correspondence. So to explain to you briefly what that is and why it's so important, it's an understanding that 1 means one thing and 5 means 5 things. And that can be anything. It's an abstract concept that relates to a concrete number of items. The reason that this is so important, we are so familiar with this as adults that we often don't think of it at all. We teach children to recognize numbers, to look at a 2 and say, that's a 2. But you also have to think, well, what is 2? And 2 can mean 2 of anything. 2 can mean 2 sheep or 2 trucks or 2 ice cream cones. It can mean 2 abstract things. It can mean 2 feelings or 2 thoughts or 2 ideas. And so one-to-one correspondence connects those ideas in their minds. That numbers are not just a string of sounds that you say as you're counting. Children who aren't taught to count a wide variety of objects often struggle with one-to-one correspondence because instead they just learn to recite numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without understanding what 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mean. And the way you make that connection in their minds is by giving them the opportunity to count real objects and a wide variety of them. Then moving on to fine motor objectives for this week. What we do with fine motor skills is mix 4 different types of activities to work. It's almost like going to the gym. In order to get to these more advanced tripod grips where your child can grip a pen or a pencil properly and write, they actually need to develop several different muscles and several different skills in their hand in order to be able to really do that with skill and ease. And so what we do is take 4 different exercises, so to speak, that work different muscles and different ways of moving your hand, and give you activities to choose from to practice each of those 4 different areas, like going to the gym and working on 4 different sets of muscles with different exercises. And the ones for week 1 are bilateral hand coordination. You'll pick an activity to work on that. And so that's using both hands together to do something, whether it's taking a cap off of a pen, whether it's holding a piece of paper on the table while you're coloring on it, using both hands together on a single task. In-hand manipulation, so that is where you're manipulating an object with a single hand. So a good example of that is taking a coin from the palm of your hand and moving it up to your fingertips to put it in a piggy bank. We'll work on hand-eye coordination, which is anything that requires the coordination of your hands and eyes. So throwing a beanbag into a laundry basket or something of that nature. And then precision activities. So something that requires really fine precision, like threading a bead onto a pipe cleaner, or picking up a small object with tweezers or with your pinch grasp. Then for social emotional learning, we have typically 2 different objectives a week for you to look for opportunities to incorporate and some activity ideas to go with them. This week, the first activity or the first objective is self-awareness. Recognizes and labels basic emotions and associates them with words, facial expressions, and or gestures. So whether this is reading picture books that talk about emotions and match them up with different faces, or whether it's just working with noticing and labeling those for your child, like, oh, I see that your block tower fell over and you look very frustrated. Naming and labeling those words for them to help them, give them the vocabulary that they need to express their own feelings, but also helping them to learn to identify what feelings other people might be feeling when they see that. And the second social emotional objective is self-management. With help, uses strategies to manage intense or difficult feelings. And this objective goes right into the fun project for the end of the week, which is to create a sensory bottle. We're going to look for opportunities for you to work with your child when they feel really upset, really frustrated, really sad. What are the strategies that that child needs to go to in order to manage those in an appropriate way? And they do need help and support in doing this. Grown-ups struggle with managing intense feelings. Certainly little children definitely require support to help them to do so. And one of these sensory bottles are a fantastic way to do that. So your fun activity for this week is to create, sometimes they're called discovery bottles or calm down bottles. There's a lot of different ways that you can personalize them, and then they make fantastic tools to work on this objective as well. One other final thought that I did want to mention as well is that going back to our cognitive objective for this week, our cognitive objectives fall into various areas of cognitive thought and skill. Analyzation, decision making, thinking, and every time we have an objective in a new area that we haven't talked about before, I'll talk to you a little bit about that umbrella skill, or what it's about, to give you a little more insight into how it works and what you're going for there. The cognitive objective for this week of asks why questions falls under the category of analyzing. Analyzing means the close examination or study of a thing or idea, including all of its component parts. This includes determining how the thing or idea relates to other things or ideas by noting characteristics, making comparisons, and categorizing. So asking why questions when your child does that, it's an example of how they're analyzing. They're trying to figure something out. They're trying to figure out how things fit together. When your child sorts their Legos by color or sorts their dinosaurs, sorts anything at all, that's an example of analyzing. When they ask a question about why is the sky blue, they're trying to analyze it. They're looking for characteristics. Okay, the sky is blue. They're trying to figure out how that piece of information assimilates and fits into the other things that they know about the sky and into all of their science knowledge that they've already accumulated. So every time we look at a different cognitive objective, I'll talk to you a little bit about what category it falls in, and that will help you to look for opportunities when your child is engaged in an activity that relates to that category. Once again, this is a ton of information for week 1. Don't feel like you have to get it all in one go. Come back to the video whenever you need to get a little reminder to make notes about different aspects of this. And I hope you have a tremendous amount of fun in week 1. Can't wait to see you back for week 2.